As Adam said before. Oh, there's our recording thing. Got it. Hopefully everyone got that one. Welcome. My name is Nat Zappia, and I'm the director of the Institute for Sustainability here at CSUN. And I am honored to be the moderator today for our panel of entrepreneurs, sustainable fashion entrepreneurs, and really visionaries. I'm really looking forward to hearing their stories and just from the background information and projects they're working on. It's really inspiring and excited to learn more. Before I begin, I just wanted to thank a few folks. First, I wanted to thank the folks at Lacey. I think I don't know if Lauren is here, Lauren Harper, but oh no, another Lauren. Hi, Lauren. There's another Lauren, and I think I'd say Brenda's there too. The folks at Lacey, which stands for the LA Clean Tech Incubator, and who the folks today actually are I guess would be graduates of that, or you've worked with Lacey. And so Lacey is our supporter of this sustainable fashion ambassador program, and Lacey has been a long time friend and partner of CSUN. So we're really excited to continue this partnership, and hopefully we'll continue this sustainable fashion collaboration. It's really been wonderful, and I've learned so much. I also wanted to thank Aline and Tracy, Dr. Tracy Chung and Aline Villagracias, who have spearheaded this project and this program. And so just for those of you who are joining us for the first time, there's a deep history at CSUN with around fashion and textile, apparel, faculty. There's a faculty, there's the college that's exploring these issues, and we have students who are really interested. So there's a lot of interest around fashion, and of course there's a lot of interest around sustainability. So Tracy and Aline came up with this program to link those two and to really expose our students and to teach our students about the intersection of sustainability, fashion, entrepreneurial activities around that. And of course, being in Los Angeles, we are blessed with a deep pool of innovators and entrepreneurs around these issues. So thank you for your vision, Aline and Tracy. So I'm going to introduce our panelists today, and then we'll kick it off. We have a bunch of questions, and it's meant to be, of course, if anyone wants to present any slides or any visuals, just let Tracy know. But I think it's today is meant to be a conversational, and we really want to get a sense of the speaker's vision and their process around not just fashion, but also just as business people, as entrepreneurs. So first, I'm gonna go down in no particular order. I'm just gonna go down with the bios here. And Adam, forgive me if I mispronounced your last name, but Taubenfligel?
That was pretty good.
Oh, yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
How is it? How do you say it?
Taubenfligel.
Oh, Taubenfligel.
People usually do much worse than you just did,
good.
so you're fine, I promise.
Thank you, Adam. So Adam, he began his career in denim out of a love of fashion, and along the way, his brother, sister created a brand called Triarchy, where they set out to change the denim industry, one pair of jeans at a time. Since then, they have pioneered new technologies that mimic weather to distress jeans into the rich blue colors that we all know and love so much. When not making jeans better, Adam focuses his time on educating what sustainability really means, so we can move past greenwashing and into a world where everyone is accountable for the work that they do. Thanks for coming, Adam. Lauren Gregor is the founder and CEO of Romper, a rental clothing company for children because they grow so fast. Romper is changing children's fashion by providing parents with curated capsule wardrobes that reduce the burden of fast fashion on the planet. Prior to founding Romper, Lauren served as a strategy and operations leader at First Group and the LA Unified School District. She brings her experience in business and, of course, as a mom, to her goal of making life easier for parents and the planet. And our last panelist is Jenny Silbert. who is an architect turned sustainable design entrepreneur with a passion for dumpster diving. Prior to founding Rewilder, she developed new materials and fabrication processes for complex architectural projects. As an expert in waste reduction, she brings her knowledge and experience to solving the world's trash problem through a design lens. Rewilder is a sustainable design company that diverts industrial waste from landfill and upcycles the material into consumer goods. So thank you, Adam, Lauren, and Jenny for coming today. So I think if it's okay, I'd like to, maybe I'll kick it off as a way of further introduce, a way of allowing you to further introduce yourselves and maybe ask this broad question of how you see, I see you all have very different ways of, well, overlapping ways, but divergent ways of linking sustainability and fashion. So if we could start with you, Jenny, and then we could move to Lauren and Adam. How do you see the intersection? How do you see that intersection? How does it shape your how does it shape your entrepreneurial activities in your business?
Yeah, thanks. Well, thanks everyone, first of all, for being here. It's such a thrill to be able to share my story. So I'm Jenny. My official title at Rewilder is the Master Scavenger. That's what I call myself. And that's a super interesting question for me because my background is not in fashion, it's in architecture and materials. So I started my career doing architectural problem solving, new material development. I have a master's in architecture from Yale, and in that career, I worked mostly on like complex problem solving. So my focus has always been on how do I have the biggest impact. So Rewilder, when I started Rewilder, it was because I was teaching a class at Art Center, a materials innovation class there, and I was researching materials for the students actually. And I found this one specific material, which is a filter cloth that's used in big beer manufacturing. And I brought that material. I mean, it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It has this beautiful patina from its first life in beer making. Depending on what kind of beer they're making, it's either like this copper golden or silver gray. So it's this gorgeous industrial material that can't be recycled. So for me, I had this visceral response to it. I brought it to my best friend, Lisa, and her background is in fashion. So she's firmly rooted in, she's an expert handbag designer. So when she saw the material totally out of context, she was like, okay, let's make bags. That's what she does, right? So she was like, I want to use this material to make bags. So I sort of got into fashion askew, right? It's not my background and it's not even my passion really. And Lisa left Rewilder about 4 years ago. So I'm sort of sitting in this weird space where I like to dress nice, right? Like I like fashion. I think of it as a creative outlet for myself personally, but it's not something that I've done until Rewilder. So now I'm like firmly sitting in this place where I definitely believe that design and sustainability go hand in hand. And we have all of these like really robust goals to get as close to zero waste as possible. There's certain things that we sort of struggle with always, zippers and hardware and things like if you're working in fashion, you probably know that already. But it's a strange space for me to be like, just as one other example, and then I'll let everyone else go. But when we started Rewilder, for me, I was like, let's talk about sustainability. Let's talk about the impact. Let's talk about, you know, how much CO2 each piece is saving. And then we quickly realized that like people didn't really give a shit about that. So then we're like, okay, let's talk about how cool this stuff is. Yeah. And then we started to get traction on like, actually people want cool fashion products. And now we're back at this place where there's a balance. So I feel comfortable saying like, this stuff is really cool. You know, if it's not cool, nobody cares about it. So that was a sort of a roundabout way to say that it's a little bit of an uncomfortable space for me personally, actually.
Interesting. Thank you. Oh, go ahead, Lauren.
Hi. Yeah, really excited to be here today. And I don't come from a fashion background, all outside of fashion. But I think where I came from when I was starting Romper and really thinking about what we would be doing as a business was like, how do the everyday decisions we make as a consumer affect sustainability? So, or have an adverse impact or a, positive impact. And one of the things that I was seeing is I had 2 young kids at the time, and they do grow really quickly, and you're buying stuff all the time and you're looking for the next size. And it's like, this is obvious. We know that children grow.
Right.
we know we're going to need new things for them, not new, but like we know they have to have a new size. Like, why is there not a solution out here that is thinking about that, making the life easier for parents and being convenient, but also is reducing and our burden on the planet, and is not delivering endless cardboard boxes to your door, or, you know, just consume more. And so that's really where I started to think about it, was like similarly to what Jenny was saying, is like, how do you make it an everyday choice that also is sustainable? So how do you make it a choice where this is actually makes sense financially for me? It's affordable. It saves me money. It saves me time. It's way convenient, and I get the stuff that I want. Oh, and by the way, I'm strongly reducing my impact, or, you know, reducing how much I'm consuming. And so that's where we kind of come from. Like, yes, parents still want their kids to look cute, and they want the clothes to be quality, and they want them to be clean and look nice. But we can do that with a lot less resource, and then every one of those parents going out and buying something new for themselves each time. So that's kind of where we think about it. And hopefully, like, the easier it is to make a sustainable choice, then the more people will make it.
Thank you. Go ahead, Adam.
In such good company. Thank you for having me. I also don't come from a fashion background, because I come from a denim background, and I think that's different, just because it's the only fabric I've ever worked with. But I started in denim over a decade ago, and when I started my brand Triarchy with my brother and sister, it became, we were very small, but then when we had the opportunity to grow and move to larger manufacturing facilities, it just became very apparent to us how horrific the denim industry is. When you're working with a laundry that has 1 or 2 machines going, it doesn't really ring any bells. But when you go to a facility that has 60 to 100 machines just spewing water all day long with chemicals, and we basically just realized that the world doesn't need another denim brand. So if we're going to do this, why don't we do it in a way that could change the industry for the better? So we took it offline for close to 2 years and did a deep dive on all things sustainability. This was kind of before it became a trending topic. So it really was the wild, wild west of what the hell are we doing? And I think most of the vendors we were looking at were also saying, what the hell are we doing? So it was kind of an interesting time for us to work together and come up with ways to not only make the fabric better, but then refine the wash processes that were being innovated to replace the traditional manufacturing techniques that contribute to the wastefulness of denim. So since then, we have done a few things like bring to market the world's first plastic-free stretch denim. So we eliminated plastic and replaced it with natural rubber. And things like that is what we work on and what we try to pioneer, so that we can still deliver that same pair of jeans that you know and love, but behind the curtain, it's done completely differently. Long story short.
So it's, as you all have intimated, you're all coming from such different vantage points. And what I always find so fascinating, and I'm sure many of you will agree, with fashion, it's how everyone comes from places that aren't from the fashion space, if you will, and they come to sustainable fashion. And Jenny, I wanted to ask you about all of you about getting to ask about Lacey and your kind of the startup questions and company questions, but I did want to return to you mentioned about your uncomfortable space, and maybe I wanted to ask you if you could follow up and talk about that, because I see some of that in what everyone was kind of introducing themselves.
Yeah, no, of course. I think it's mostly that, let's see, I guess one of the things that I would say that's actually a big shift for me, which I'm really excited about, is that we're now at this place where I'm looking to hire designers to do that work, because Lisa, I don't know if I already said this, but she left Rewilder about 4 years ago. So that was when I actually shifted focus from doing consumer goods to doing more collaborations and like B2B work. So we work now, most of our business now is collaborative with larger companies. And that's everyone from like Disney, the Hollywood Bowl, the LA Rams. So we're working with their waste streams now. So when we started, it was basically like I'm sourcing and finding materials, and that's like detective work. And that for me is the fun part. Like when you said I have a passion for dumpster diving, like that is it. I love that. Like going into a place and looking for things that just people would never think of as trash. This is a little bit of an aside, but we did a jacket, I guess it was already 2 years ago, that was 100% upcycled. And that was like the design challenge. And I hired a designer to do that. And it started as a duffel where I was like, I want to make this duffel. And then it morphed into a backpack and then a jacket based on what was available to upcycle. But that project started because someone at this company called Change, which is an electric vehicle company, they called me in to do basically like a materials audit. And they had imported all of these last mile vehicles from China. And in order to import them, because of this was all during Trump times, and they had to call them buses. And in order to call them buses, they had to fit them out with actual seats. So when they got to America, the first thing that they did was literally remove the seats from these vans so that they could then be cargo vans. So he had like 3,000 like brand new seats that he had called me in to look at. And we ended up solving that problem in a totally different way. But while I was there, I was like, well, what's that big pile of silver fabric in the corner? And he was like, oh, those are the covers that when these get shipped over, they're too big to fit inside the shipping container. So we cover them in this silver fabric, and then, you know, we pull it off with a crane, and then it goes into the dumpster. And I was like, okay, well, stop putting that in the dumpster. Like, let's use it. Let's figure out what we can do with it. And we ended up making these jackets. That was a total aside. Sorry about that. The question was, oh, but so my point was that I'm at this place where I'm actually hiring designers to do that piece that I realized at some point that it's like fashion design is its whole own thing, right? Like architectural design and detailing is one thing, but like putting together a bag or putting together a jacket and the proportions and the details and even the sewing, like when I started Rewilder, I took a class, like a free sewing class at Mood, because I was like, well, I better at least know how to like use this machine that everybody that I'm working, like everybody's working for me is using these machines and they're absolute experts. So it wasn't like I was ever thinking I'm going to make these things myself, but at least now I'm proficient in like threading the machine and getting it to work so I can understand it a little bit. But it's just a whole nother level of detailing. So getting to understand, and I mean, this is something that I've understood professionally for a long time, because even in architecture, it was always technology transfer. Like my job in architecture was adjacent to automotive and aerospace. And if like we had a problem to solve, I would walk next door to the automotive shop and be like, how do you solve this problem? Right? Because there's so many ways that those things cross over. And the same is true. It's just a whole different language. But it's also so hard to know in fashion what people are going to respond to. Like that whole thing is like a whole language in and of itself, right? Like what's gonna be the next big thing. Like when Lisa and I started Rewilder, I know this because we've talked a lot about it, but she was hoping, like her hope was that we were going to release a consumer product that was going to be so hot that everybody was just going to want it. You know, it was going to be one of those things that just like it blew up and everybody wants this. And when that didn't happen, we had to sort of step back and be like, okay, wait a sec, what are we doing and how are we going to get this out there and what's the mission and the message? And actually Lacey has been so helpful in that whole customer discovery process, like understanding what the process is to actually having an idea, getting from an idea to launching a product, because we had no idea what we were doing in that sense when we started.
That's actually a great segue. Maybe I could ask Adam and Lauren to talk about that. I mean, there's a lot of things we could talk about, but I guess Lacey, your experiences with Lacey and how perhaps, maybe just reflect on that and we could talk about different aspects of that. I don't know who wants to go first. Lauren.
Yeah, I can talk about that. Yeah, so I am part of the Lacey incubation cohort, the second cohort. I started in the spring of this 2021 with them. And it's been really beneficial. I think like one of the good things about it is like you're in a community that everybody cares about this, and you're in a community of other founders that are like solving, they may be like, a lot of my cohort are doing batteries and electric vehicles and transport, but we're all doing the same thing. Like we're all struggling through how to grow, how to raise money, how to answer this consumer question or customer, need. And so just like being in a community where people are going through that with you as like an entrepreneur is super helpful. And to know that, it's people that are like-minded, like we care about building a business, not just to make money, but also that's doing better for the world and for the planet. So that's been great. And get to meet people in other programs like Jenny and just have this like sort of team behind you, which is pretty awesome. And especially I'm a solo founder, so I don't have a lot of people to bounce ideas off of. So that's what I use those type of networks for a lot.
I guess, Adam, I know you start with to kind of maybe tackle that question too with your family. Maybe you could talk about that and different.
Yeah, I mean, I co-founded the brand with my brother and sister, which was really incredible. And to this day, it's the three of us that are. I mean, we have a much bigger team now, but people always kind of are surprised when I say that. Like, how do you work with your brother and sister? But somehow none of us live in the same city, so I think that might be a contributing factor to our success, that we Zoom and FaceTime and do all that stuff multiple times a day. But I think because none of us live in the same city, we appreciate that we work together so that we have that time. So, but it really was just the three of us, and we had to fill roles like sustainability lead and marketing lead and just wear all the hats. But then it also became really clear that when you try, it's kind of an admirable thing to try to wear all the hats, but then you really are doing the brand a disservice. So when we finally did free up some capital, and the first thing we do whenever we free up capital is bring more people on. It's always like, why aren't we making money yet? It's like, oh, because we keep hiring more people, but we need to do that so that people can, do what they do best. And that's really been letting everyone do what they do best and not pretending like you know how to do it is probably one of the best things we've done in the last few years.
Maybe I could actually, if that's okay, I could follow up with that. Because you said the growth, and this could be for everybody too. What I love about your story is this problem solving, and all of you have this problem solving aspect to why you started the company. And it seems with fashion, I think all three of you have mentioned this. I know I'm thinking of the Romper kids, like parents want their kids to look clean. They want clean, meaning nice little cute outfits and all that. And that intersection between that is solving a problem, but then it's also, since it's fashion, it is a people don't always, they're solving the problem of keeping warm if it's cold out, but beyond that problem solving, they don't think of the fashion in that way, perhaps, at least some consumers. And so it seems like all three of you have to wrestle with that issue of solving a sustainability problem, tackling a sustainability problem, but also meeting the needs of the it thing or whatever the consumer wants. So I guess my question is, how do you have those constant questions? Do you tackle, or do you wrestle with those questions of where, especially if you're growing, like you're saying, Adam, you're scaling up a lot. So I was just curious how the problem solving kernel still remains in your operations.
I mean, I think as soon as one problem gets solved, 50 others present themselves. And it's like, if you would have told me 2 years ago that we'd be where we are today, I wouldn't have believed you. But then with that comes this whole host of other things. And actually the biggest problem on my desk right now is inflation and sustainability. getting more expensive and therefore more out of reach to people. And our goal is always that we want to make it more accessible. And it is literally proving to be impossible to do that. And it kind of breaks my heart a little bit, because like the goal we set out is, let's just keep trying to make it cheaper. Let's move manufacturing outside of LA, because it's impossible to do sustainable denim manufacturing in Los Angeles because the prices are shocking. And then the pandemic happens and inflation happens. And then I just got the pricing for our pre-fall collection this morning. And I was like, how is a pair of shorts costing more than 5-pocket jeans now? What? And how do I explain that to buyers? And how then do buyers explain that to the end consumer? And then it's just, it's a real interesting place to be. But I think the biggest thing is that everyone wants to say that they support sustainability and that it's their most important thing, but no one's willing to give anything up. No one's willing to not want the acid wash jean, which is created with acid, and you can't replicate that sustainably yet. And so when buyers are like, why don't you have this and this? And I'm like, well, because do you want me to dump acid on you? Like, that's how I can make it. But otherwise, it's just, yeah, I just went on a tangent as well. Yeah. But
great.
That's what's in front of us right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. I mean, I think like we're struggling with the same thing. There's at the core of what we founded the business on is like this accessibility to sustainability. And like right now you could do some of these things, but like they're very unaffordable for the average parent or average, person. And shipping costs is our largest operating cost at the moment, and it's going up, and like we don't have any choice with it. It's just, that's going to happen. And we are in a similar place of like, I always wanted to keep our prices really reasonable and affordable for like your everyday family. And that's something that we're going to have to do and like test with our customers of, this is the challenge that we're facing, and are you willing to pay $2 extra a month or whatever that might be, and test that with them. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know we'll be like broken records, but it's exactly the same, exactly the same challenges for us, like making the cost of making something in LA versus the expectations of what people will pay for something that is made overseas is like, it means for us at Rewilder, like education is the first part of every sale that we do, which is basically like your profit margins are going to be different. This is handmade in Los Angeles from upcycled materials, so you can't 5x your margins. Like we're working on a project with, I mean, this is literally every project I work on, but like with the Ace Hotel using their scrap terry cloth to make bucket hats, right? So it's like, it's a pretty simple project, but basically I have to say to them, it's going to cost us $40 to make this hat here in LA. So if you want to charge $80 for this hat, like that's the minimum, or that's like the maximum, but there's no way it's costing less than $40 to make it. So it's like their expectation, it's just literally like upending everybody's expectations from the get-go. And I feel fortunate that we're in a position, because most of the projects that we do are paid through marketing dollars, actually, because it's so far out of traditional retail that most of the projects that we sign and that we do are marketing projects. I know that sounds crazy, but that's how we've found the easiest way into actually getting people to pull the trigger on doing these upcycling projects.
So when you say marketing, you mean
like PR, marketing, storytelling. The
yeah,
actual people that are paying for it is they're not the purchasing. They're not purchasing people. They're marketing and storytelling people for these bigger brands, so that they don't have to have the same margins. I mean, when I go into, we just did a pitch for PacSun, and they're basically like, we can pay you, $9 a t-shirt. That's all we can pay. And you're like, okay, well, we're talking about cutting up old t-shirts, rehabilitating the material, sewing it back together into a roll of fabric, and then making a t-shirt. Like, there's no way I can hit that price point. So the only way that a project like that is feasible then is if someone in marketing or PR wants to tell a great story about saving this material from the landfill, and then there's more money there.
Wow. So there's so much there. I think actually, and we're getting a lot of questions in the chat. I'll just I'll go in order, and forgive me if I miss any. Maybe Lean and Tracy could, check me if I miss any. But I have this similar to what you were just talking about, Jenny. This is from Abby, and she says to Lauren, "As a parent, I love your idea." With exclamation points. So I should have said it more. I love your idea. How's the pandemic impacted your business, and what innovative techniques have worked to grow that business? So similar to what Jenny and Adam have been talking about as well.
Yeah. Interestingly, so I launched Rent to Romper the same week that LA locked down. So we're as old as the pandemic. But I think the pandemic actually kind of helped us. At the beginning, there were a lot of questions around just like, how are we cleaning the clothes and sanitization? And I think that was sort of back when everybody was still like wiping down their groceries and things and really concerned about that. But that sort of dropped away pretty quickly. And I think instead people wanted everything delivered to the house. And especially if you have a newborn or a young child, you don't want to take them with you to a store or like out shopping in these places. So I think that convenience factor of just like taking that off their list has actually really helped us. And then, I mean, I think we have a couple of things that I think are differentiators for us. And one of them is we are sort of brand agnostic. So like our core mission at the moment is reuse. So like extend the life of clothes as long as we possibly can. And that means any clothes. Like somebody can donate their used clothing to us and we're not going to not take it because it's a big box retailer. We're going to use it as long as we possibly can. And then we're going to divert from landfill. So that's core to our philosophy, which means that all of these like delays and shipping and everything hasn't impacted us. Like we have suppliers who say, or brands that we'll purchase wholesale from, and they're like, all of our toddler clothes are still on a ship out in wherever. And then that's fine because we can purchase from someone else because we don't like, it doesn't matter necessarily where our brands come from. As we grow, like I'm definitely trying to be selective about the brands that we do purchase wholesale from and lean towards like made in the US and women owned and sustainably made, which has been amazing as we've grown to like be able to lean into that more. But at the same time, we're still going to continue to use everything that we possibly can, any of the resources that are out there. So I think that's kind of like when you ask about innovative things, I don't necessarily know that it's innovative to like use resources that actually exist today. But I think it is one of our differentiators because we don't have to worry about supply chain, but we also, because we carry over 150 brands, we can curate almost anything for anyone. So it kind of sets us apart in that way.
So you kind of answered the next question, which maybe, and if Jenny and Adam want to answer this, or Jenny or Lauren, you could also continue down this thread. Question about how you brand uniqueness from another sustainable brand. So you mentioned how you differentiate, but maybe, I don't know if Adam or Jenny want to add to that.
Go ahead, Adam.
I feel really strongly about this question because we don't make any of our discoveries proprietary. Like we develop a fabric and we make it available, which actually makes it really difficult to get funding because people always want you to keep all of your IP, and I get that. But if we're talking about sustainability and if you're investing and if you care about sustainability, then those don't go hand in hand. If you want to progress the agenda, then you share everything. And so I think also that if somebody came into our studio and copied all of our designs and used all of our fabrics and put them to market, it still wouldn't be Triarchy and it still wouldn't be me. And so it doesn't matter. And I really believe that, because what we bring is a brand that we've created. It's the people that are here. It's the things we believe in. It's the touch points of education that we put. And that's a question that was brought up in the chat too. And like, if you go on our website and you look at a product, you have third-party auditors that have done analysis of every garment we make and share the equivalencies of the consumptions, how we offset the carbon. You can click through to the projects that we donate to. You can go further to look at the supply chain, which is verified on blockchain. You can click through to every supplier. You can view all the certificates to everything from organic cotton to no use of chemicals. Like it's so much that we do that I hope everyone does copy us, because then everyone will be doing the best they can. And if we can light that path, that's what we set out to do. So the uniqueness is the people in the brand. And so, like I said, even if you copied everything and you brought it to market, it wouldn't be Triarchy. So you couldn't copy it. The only way you could copy it is if you assumed me as a person and then stole the brand. Besides that, I don't really have much concern about that, you know.
Adam, I can't wait to dig into your website.
Right.
I so applaud you, and I completely agree. I know I said this at the beginning, but my background in architecture was a very collaborative and shared knowledge. And when I started Rewilder with Lisa, whose background was in fashion, she was very much like, keep everything really tight, because in the fashion industry that she came from, people just stole and copied everything. So she was always like, don't tell anyone anything. And I was like, well, let's tell everybody everything. So yeah, I'm fully on board with that mission. I would say that I aspire to do what you're doing. And I think the hurdle for me right now is just like being a single person, or like a small team of people now. We don't have the bandwidth to get all of that information out there. Like I have all of it in my head. It's just actually outputting it is difficult.
I am just going to chime in and say that we expose all of these practices via third-party auditors, and they do make it really easy. So I'll share the contacts with you, and you can chat with them, because
That would be great.
it's shocking how easy they make it, really. Ish.
But we
It's
also
just tough.
we also do sell materials, and like if anyone wants to use the materials we're using, I'm always happy to share those contacts. Like I am very transparent about where the stuff comes from, because I feel exactly the same. Like if someone wanted to spend 6 months digging into Miller Coors and finding that material again, then more power to you. Go and use it. Like the more people at Miller Coors, they throw away 2 tons of that filter cloth every 3 days. Like I'm just scratching the surface of what can actually be used. So anyone and everyone should be using this stuff. I totally agree.
And I totally hear you, because when I was in normal fashion before, everything was top secret.
Yeah.
And in sustainability, it's just open doors everywhere. And I can literally message one of our competitor brands, sustainable denim brand. I can message the owner and just be like, hey, I've been this, and that. Like, do you experience this? And he'll be like, oh yeah, but you should talk to this person. I'm like, thanks, buddy. Let's have lunch later. Bye. And we're like direct competitors, because we both understand that there is in fact room for everybody. Yeah. And just the denim pie is what, 14 billion a year. I think there's probably space for everyone here. So calm down and help each other out.
The VC piece that you mentioned is really interesting too, because we had a conversation a few weeks ago with a venture capitalist firm, and they were basically like, how are you going to get to be $1 billion company? And Stephanie and I were both like, no, we're not going to get to be $1 billion company.
Right. I went through a lot of those conversations where it's like, I think none of us want to be here. So peace.
So this actually this is a similar question. I wanted to ask about equity and underserved communities. But before that, I wanted to ask you, since we're on this thread here, this is from Mario, it's to Jenny, but this could be to all three of you, I think. Do you need permits or when you I guess, do you need permits to or report to somebody when using products from one industry that's going to be, I guess, in the end, you're going to be producing a completely different product? And I guess his question is really around what's the effect on consumers when knowing that the material of their product was not originally intended for that product? So I guess it could be,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I think for the most part, we use that as a storytelling benefit,
Yeah.
right? And I, let me think, like the only times that we have had to go through any sort of stringent testing process is when we're working with a company like Disney, for
Mhm.
example, where they require
Mhm.
like very stringent testing to turn their banners into bags. But for Rewilder as a consumer goods company, as we started, we never had to do any of that. And I think that the main thing, like for example, we used in our first line of bags, we used climbing ropes as the handles. That detail was amazing. We actually like hollowed out the ropes and stitched them together. So it was like 3 ropes stitched together, really like flat for handles. And it was actually super fine. To talk about like stealing ideas, one of our competitors that we had met on at this trade show, like 6 months after we made that bag and put it out, they had that exact same detailing in all of their bags. And we like literally called them up and I was like, hey, what's happening? And that was still when Lisa was there. So she was pissed. It was crazy. But anyway, that's an aside. But the only thing like with the climbing ropes, we had to sign a bunch of paperwork that just said like, we're not going to use these for climbing. So it was mostly safety, like human safety issues, but we haven't come across any problems like that in transitioning airbags or seat belts. I mean, we're not using them for safety. So I guess the short answer is no.
Yeah. I don't know if Florian or Adam, is anything that's related to that.
I don't think so,
No, okay.
because we only use denim, and denim is pretty clear for
Sure.
what the purpose is.
Sure. So I guess I wanted to switch. There's another question from Abby about it's at CSUN in particular, and many of the CSUs, when we talk about sustainability, we are really focused on communities that usually aren't involved in that conversation, and really thinking about equity and environmental justice and helping foster resilient communities on the front lines of climate change and all of those issues. And so I guess this is for all 3 of you. And Abby, if I'm asking this incorrectly, just stop me. But so she asked, how can you serve the underserved community? How can you serve the underserved communities when things are sustainable or pricey? How do you get around that, or how do you think about that?
I mean, the short answer from what I'm experiencing these days is you can't.
Yeah.
I'm really trying, but I mean, it's all new technology, right? Like the way that I produce a pair of jeans that to the consumer eye is like, oh, I've seen that for the last 60 years. That's just a pair of jeans. But when you go behind the curtain, like this shirt, for example, is made using Naya fiber, which is sustainably farmed wood pulp. It's an awesome story. It does hardly any water, all the things, but the price per yardage is double. So I'm trying to bring this, but then it's going to cost $300 at retail. So, but in time it will come down. It's just, we're not there yet,
Yeah, I think similarly, like it's hard to compete with a $2 t-shirt if you're trying to pay people a proper wage and have the right product and the right, materials and all of that. But I think for us, like, aside from the, like what you're actually using and selling is sorry, my kids just walked in the door from school, so I might get interrupted in a second, but is like, we hope to grow into be a big company. We're shipping all over the US today, and we have to pay people to fulfill. So we have to pay people to pack our capsules, to curate, to buy the clothes. And what we're trying to do is be really thoughtful about who we hire and what those roles look like. And so right now our team is 100% women. We are all mothers. Most of the women that we are on our team are out of work because of the pandemic and don't have childcare. And that's why they can't go back to work. So we are trying to work really flexible schedules, offer remote opportunities. And so we feel like part of our impact can be, what does our company actually look like, and how do we build that?
Yeah, I was going to say exactly the same thing about workforce development and skilled labor. And like, actually, I agree completely with you, Adam, that the only way that we have been able to make sustainability more affordable is by just like cutting our profit margins. And even so, like if it costs me $70 to make a backpack and I sell it for $85, then people are still like, why does your backpack cost $85? So it's really not that doesn't even really work. So I think, Lauren, what you said is spot on. And that's what Steph and I have been talking a lot about, is like, what does it look like to create a job force of skilled labor that they actually have skills? It's not just like rote, it has to do, and it's sort of rooted in community and sustainability. And how does that actually change the landscape of the city?
So that actually, and everyone keep bringing those questions on, but as we're waiting for a few more, I wanted to maybe ask a follow-up about, related to this, like, I guess your pitch. A few of you have mentioned when you're talking to VC or, whoever, investors, or, and the challenges around that. And so the question is, how do you do fundraising? Obviously or how do you give that pitch to whoever you have to give it to? Like, obviously different audiences have different, things that they want to hear, but I guess folks that you were trying to, let's say, raise capital, or maybe talk about it when you first started, that kind of thing.
We were self-funded.
Yeah.
I had a couple different design jobs for other brands that we would just funnel into Triarchy to build it. And then when we were finally in a position to go after proper funding, the plan that we had in place was a pretty big ask. And so most of the people that we spoke to just said, I love this, but come back to us when you've hit 1 million in sales.
Yeah.
No one really wanted to have, no matter how much they love the mission, if they're the impact investors and the angel fund, we're still talking business. So it's like, come back to us when you've hit 1 million and we'll get this going. So in the meantime, we kind of pivoted our direction and we ended up partnering with our manufacturer, which was a way to drastically reduce our costs and still keep a healthy margin. And so that's been glorious, to be honest. And so now we're kind of not in a position where we need funding, which is awesome. I mean, except for this whole inflation thing, which now I'm kind of like, let's get that pitch revised. But that's what we did instead, because it was more often than not, it was like, have you hit 1 million? We're like, no, they're like, well then just send the deck and we'll talk later. It was just kind of the thing. So that was my experience a lot of the time. That's the magic number.
1
million.
I am also raising money actively right now, in case anybody has some, they want to invest in us. Great company. But I bootstrapped for about a year and worked full-time job and while building the company. So that's part of it, is like I worked a lot. And while I really got going, and then I was able to raise some from like smaller angel investors who were really people that just believed in me, that I worked with in some part of my career, who just said sort of like, whatever you're doing, I'm going to write this check. And those were like $5,000 or like, I took whatever I could get to sort of keep us going. And now we're trying to raise, and we have a list of like what are so-called impact investors. So people that actually care about like what we're doing for the planet. But even then, I'll say, like, similar to what you're saying, Adam, it's like they still want you to have a profit and you still have to grow quickly and have an impact. So it doesn't go away, and the profit margin still has to be there, and the business model still has to be really strong. And so part of that is around messaging, and like there's some investors that, it's like, this is a great business model, recurring revenue, we're going to grow massive, this is a huge market, and by the way, we do good for the planet. And then there's others where that conversation and that pitch is flipped. But the core that this is a really successful business model always has to be there.
Yeah, I think similar story. We started Rewilder on, I inherited $30,000 when my grandfather died. And that was at the time where I was teaching at art center. My job in architecture was super boring because I had a bunch of kids. And so I couldn't travel as much. I wasn't like in the weeds as much. So I was doing more like cost estimating and quoting, and all those pieces just sort of fit together. Like sometimes when you're putting something together and all the pieces fit, it just happened, right? So there was this like chunk of money, and Lisa had quit her job and I didn't have a job that I liked. And so we decided to take that money and invest in like renting a space and getting some machines and hiring a production manager, or actually we didn't even call him production manager at that time. He was just a sewer, like a person who could make samples for us and do small scale production. And then we were bootstrapped. I mean, it was like sales that were funding our operations, right? So we were operating sort of at the break-even point for a few years, where we had enough sales to actually pay Jose Luis, pay for our space. Lisa and I didn't take a salary. I mean, it took 4 years before I took any salary out of Rewilder. And now the way that we're not actively raising money right now. So Stephanie and I are, we're investigating through Lacey, like under the umbrella of Lacey, we're investigating this idea of sorting technology. So to post-consumer textile sorting, which is like a whole nother conversation. But it has to do with inputs for recycling facilities that actually don't get enough material coming in, or enough good material coming in to run their recycling operations. So we're investigating that because both of us are invested in having the biggest possible impact. But while we do that, the way that we're making money is actually by doing these collaborations with bigger brands. So we're focused on sales, B2B sales right now, to make money that will keep us going into that next phase.
Wow, it sounds like all three of you are, it's an incessantly
like a
creative
puzzle.
process. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's really amazing. So we're coming towards the end of the hour, and we wanted to allow all three of you to, since we have a lot of students here, to give your words of advice, not just for students, but for other, for everyone who's here, but advice just for if you want to start your own company, what might you have done differently, or what are some parting words of wisdom from three wise folks?
Can I take this one first, you guys? What do you think?
Sounds good to me.
Words of wisdom. I think, knowing what I know now, I would have definitely spent more time in advance really understanding what drives people to purchase and who my customer was. That was something that sort of came much later for me. And I think that process of customer discovery and understanding what you're doing is really, really important. And I like I said, I just started understanding this when I started in the Lacey program. I mean, the other thing, there's two other things I guess that I would say. One is that to hire a good team. I know Lauren said this already, but that has been really critical for me. And when we hired Jose Luis, and he has been our production manager for 7 years now, like, make sure that you have good, passionate people on your team that can help you out and do however it works for you. But there's like creative ways to get good people to help you and back you and help you grow and build. And I guess the last thing I would say is that to like live this in your daily life and like see what those struggles are. Like, being sustainable and zero waste for me in my daily life with 3 kids and a house in LA is like almost possible. So it's something that I'm sort of constantly working on. But I mean, you guys are visionary for just being a part of the sustainability movement. Like, it is definitely out of the typical. I guess there's also, I listened to this great podcast called Conscious Chatter. I don't know if you guys ever hear that, but that's a good place to start. I love Kestrel, and that podcast in terms of sustainable fashion is a great place to start.
I also love Kestrel.
Awesome.
She's amazing.
I'm sorry, conscious pattern?
Chatter.
Oh, chatter. Okay.
Yeah, like
Okay,
chatter.
I'll try to find it. Okay, great. Adam, go for it. Or Lauren.
Oh God. I think like for me, one thing is I had this idea like in my head for 9 months or almost a year before I did something about it. And I think part of that was, you know, in like the incubators and places I've been in these communities of founders, like people talk about imposter syndrome. And I had this like, well, I'm not from that world and I'm not a founder and I'm not an entrepreneur. And so it took me a while to like jump and just try. And I started with really small steps to test the idea and then keep iterating and keep going. But I wish I had done it earlier. I really, really do. And it took me a while to build up that courage. So like, if you have great ideas, I think one thing that everybody said today is like, we need more great ideas. We need more people working on these problems if we're ever gonna make an impact. So I would say go for it. And if you need somebody to like push you off the ledge, then you can call me or send me an email. But yeah, definitely it's really exciting to see such a large community. And this today, I think, is just like evidence that people are thinking about these and people are interested in consuming in a different way. So it's really exciting. So thanks.
I would echo what Jenny said as well about team, because when I have our weekly team call, I'm always looking at the screen going like, how did I luck out with these people? Like, but I think when you do something with the right intention from the beginning, the right people gravitate towards you. And something that I really learned in terms of realizing how to get people interested in sustainability is to understand where their mindset comes from. And at the end of the day, the way this fashion machine has been built is to get everyone to react on impulse. That's how it works. So Instagram, like impulse, I want that, I need that. And I love employing the 5-minute rule, which is what I call it. Whenever I want to buy something in real life or digitally, I'll put it down for 5 minutes, go for a walk away from the computer, let that that desire to react on impulse just pass, and then I'll come back and say, oh, I don't want that. That's why we have a closet full of clothes we don't wear, because we're just like, oh yes, I want these things. And so if you just share that, you know, fewer better things through employing some sort of measure over your mindset and have a bit of discipline and just trying to get that across, it really does create a nicer life experience, not only with fashion, but with everything we do. So that's why we say sustainability is a mindset. We print that inside and then we go into further detail, just because it really is about our reactions that create our realities, right?
How could I say anything after that?
Bravo.
That was really, all three of you have really just beautiful ways to close out the talk. So Adam, Lauren, and Jenny, thank you so much for telling us your story and for sharing your passion and for inspiring all of us. So thanks everyone for
Thank
coming
you.
today.
Wait.
Oh, sorry, Tracy.
Sorry, Nat.
Yeah.
I just saw the question from Jenny. So Jenny actually asked a question back to us, to all of us. So I actually would like to invite our audience to look at the question in the chat from Jenny. I'll just read it out here. How do you assign value to the things you buy? And what would make you spend more money on something sustainable? How to value sustainability in life? I think this is a wonderful question, especially because my research interest is in consumer behavior and sustainable fashion. So I'm curious about our audience thought. Anyone would like to share your thoughts with us? Okay, we have a message. Okay. Well, for me, I guess it's really personal. I'll answer this question, but I don't think my value represent the bigger population. And to me, I think, well, since I'm an educator, I do believe education, understanding the value of sustainability, understanding the importance of sustainability is important. And that actually make me to rethink about my purchase behavior. So like now I wish we could have some kind of a website and introducing me all different of companies that are doing good to our society, so that we can, I am the one who is willing to pay more to purchase more sustainable product. But that's because I know the story about the industry and I value sustainability. Just to me, I think what I am trying to do now is to educate my student, educate more people the importance of sustainability in the fashion industry. Yeah. That's all. Anyone would like to share your answers? Maybe Adam or Lauren, you'd like to say some words? Oh, okay, sorry. Oh, sorry, did I hear something?
Oh, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I would just like to add that taking a public health course really just helped me understand the greater scope of our actions, whether it's shopping for clothes or shopping for furniture. So I think it just that was just something really important to me, in order for me to understand like the effects of how I was impacting the environment. So I think, yeah.
Thank you. All right, I'm sorry to interrupt this closing section from Nat. Well, so Nat, I will
Yeah.
I will
Oh, no,
close.
you can close out. Just go for it, Tracy. Thank you.
All right. Thank you everyone for being here today. It's an honor to meet you all. And this is a great conversation. We have learned a lot. So thank you very much. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.